compiled maybe 55K to actually have real useful functionality, but you can get them down into the order of perhaps under 1,000 bytes. So you could write very small programs that could just jump from a machine, find out what the machine was with the Perl overlay. It would ask the machine, hey, what kind of software you're running? And it would say, oh, I'm a Sunbox and I run this. And it'd say, oh, okay, then here, plop this program on you and execute.
And you're saying that would not be considered a virus?
No, at the time we're talking, bear in mind that there were certain rules that were allowed as the Internet was forming itself in between the ARPA-DARPA days and the release of it as a commercial Internet. There was this period of time when all kinds of strange things occurred.
Okay.
And that was one of them.
Who would have done something like that? Because you said English, meaning, or what I understood was, then maybe English wasn't their primary language, which means it probably came from a foreign country and probably from a foreign government?
I suspect it's well, I don't know how much of a government it is and the structure and everything, but it was Chinese.
Wow.
And it called itself Ting or Cauldron, and it carried within the cauldron all these nice little chunky vegetables of C code that it could execute just to find out what was on the server. Now bear in mind that basic technology is what Google uses to index all the web pages. It goes to the server and says, hey, I'm an indexing machine. Can I index all your web pages? And the server checks it out and says, yeah, okay, I believe you. Go ahead. But nowadays we've had to put on all these layers to authenticate everything because of all the nasty fellows running around. But at one point we were fairly naive.
If they had been able to do that far back, how?
Well, I was doing it earlier than they were because I caught them.
That's true.
I mean, I was fully operational and off of the roving robot approach by then. I was using server-based spiders.
Jeez.
In which case, my machine just sits here and gets a large list of URLs, if you will, web pages to start with, and then goes through and reads them, and then reads every page they're linked to and every page that's referenced inside them, but does it all on my server here.
Good.
So I'm not violating anybody's, confidentiality or anything.
And you wrote the program?
That does that? Sure, but that's, guys, you gotta understand, this is not like rocket science. This is well-known Internet kind of stuff. You can get books that'll say, hey, here's step A, here's step B.
How come I don't even understand the words you use? I mean, where am I?
Well, find yourself the nearest 12-year-old kid.
Yeah, I know. That's about it, isn't it?
It really is.
God.
And then ask them, do they know any script kiddies? And if they do, go and talk to those fellas.
That's what it's called, a script kiddie?
Yeah, these are the guys that are in the 8 to 15-year-old range. That's really extending it out that far, but you might find them driving around late at night with Pringles cans wrapped with copper wire connected to laptops in cars looking for, driven by somebody with a license, looking for hotspots that aren't guarded. And they piggyback on your access to the Internet and do all kinds of weird stuff.
8 to 15 years old at maximum?
Yeah. I figure after you're 12 and you're into that activity, you've become aberrant and you're not on a good path.
Gosh, this is so mind-boggling. I remember years ago, maybe 35 years ago, when it became apparent that our whole educational system was going down the crapper. And everyone was saying, oh, this is terrible. All our kids do, they go and they play these stupid games at the arcade, blah, blah, blah. And I kept saying, wait a minute. Because back in those days, the PC really didn't come into vogue until, the early 80s, 82 or something like that?
Yeah.
I kept saying, these are the ones that are going to control the world. Because they don't care about the physical aspect of a lot of stuff. They're going into, you're probably one of them, Clif. And I'm not sure how old you are, but I know you're quite young.
Well, I'm over 50, so.
Oh, well, maybe you're not. You just started and applied yourself a lot sooner than I did, that's all. My gosh, man. Isn't it? And I know because every single new run that you do, you're improving it. You're updating.
That's true, but sometimes we screw it up as well. I mean, we've done runs where we've run into our own tail because of some code area I left open. So we alter it each time. We hope that there's improvements. And recently we've been getting a little bit better because we've been getting cautious.
Wow. You say there's a lot of other people doing it. individual?
I know of at least 3 outfits, one of which I'm pretty convinced is connected with the People's Republican Army in China, and comes out of a particular city in the big middle area of China that we might call their Kansas. And so we could, for instance, call this their Kansas Navy. And then I also know of an outfit that is running out of Poland, but I don't know if it's national, extra-national, or ideological, or
Right.
what their deal is. And then I know of at least 2 commercial outfits, one out of Switzerland and one, I believe, out of Liechtenstein, although that latter group is very, very, very clandestine.
Oh, I imagine it is if they're operating out of Liechtenstein, because I don't think there are a lot of people in Liechtenstein who have the knowledge that you do and are able to do exactly what you're talking about.
We've got to be real clear about this. I mean, I don't want to seem pedantic or anything, but I like to frame the context in which we all operate so that everybody understands. Mm-hmm. One way to frame that is to tell you a little joke here.
Okay.
What do you call a person that knows 3 languages?
A smart ass, I'll tell you that.
No, trilingual.
Oh, okay.
But we'll get back to your answer in just a second.
Okay. All right.
What do you call a person that knows 2 languages? They're bilingual. What do you call a person that knows 1 language? Well, that's an American. Okay, now that's the joke. The fact of the matter is that I was a young kid when I learned that in Germany. Your instant response of somebody knowing multiple languages and they're a smart-ass goes a long way towards identifying emotional quotients about how people feel about such things. Just look at your particular emotional response to that.
Yeah, I find it very jealous because I've lived in Europe. Arthur and I lived in England. We lived in Switzerland, traveled all over the place. And what's interesting is that England is just like us. England really thinks that they don't need any other language except theirs. Now, here's Europe, which is, I don't know, what, 20 miles away?
26 miles across the channel, yeah.
I thought 26 was going out to Catalina Island. But okay, let's say within 50 miles you have Europe, because the English are not part of Europe. You know that.
Yeah, in more ways than one.
Yeah. So isn't it a shame when you're that close, that you are so ego-centered that you are not going to learn another language, and yet
it does speak to the context in which you operate, and it doesn't, particularly from my viewpoint, doesn't particularly seem healthy.
Wow.
I would think for one reason, I mean, just on the order of, individual paranoia, right? The more languages you understand, the more you can see if they're plotting against you.
Jeez.
Just at that level. But also then the more languages you understand, the more you understand the context in which another mind operates. And thus we were led to the infamous saying about the State Department that it took 6 years for a foreigner to become an American. This was in the 50s. But it only took 6 months for an American to become a foreigner when you stuck him in the State Department.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And really, how true, right?
Oh, absolutely true. Good grief. Where have, and I'm going back to actual languages now, where have we gone wrong? One of the areas I know is when my grandfather came over from Germany, and I've talked to a lot of people just recently, and their attitude is, we are going to be Americans. We do not want to speak our native language here. So my father grew up never learning German. And oh my gosh, if I could have learned German and French and what have you, I mean...
Oh, it's truly marvelous to be able to have internalized those languages. Yeah.
Yes, right. But you have to do that before the age of 8.
There's 2 windows. Having done a lot of research for my Vortex speed reading program, which lets you read up to 2,000 words per minute from computers, I had to examine how language was used and the structure of the brain and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things we learned was that there's 2 very broad windows. And curiously, you're about to enter one of them. That is to say, in the late 50s, sometimes between 55 and 58, a small subset, but significant, maybe 25 to 30% of the population gets into another language learning window, in which time they can actually internalize it as though they were 8 to 11 years old.
Interesting, except I've lost it already.
Oh, well. Okay, well, blew that one. Yeah.
Let me tell you, many years ago when I had my institute in New York, I came across an idea, because years before that, I had taken Evelyn Wood's Reading Dynamics. And to me, she was one of the most incredible human beings ever, because she came up with this idea of speed reading. And I took her class, and immediately after, I was reading about 2,500 to 3,000 words a minute. And then I said, boy, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the Bible. You can't speed read the Bible. And
Understandable.
And it ruined it. But I still know the technique.
Well, here's why you can't speed read the Bible. It does not have so much to do with the book as the limitations that you're fighting within your own brain relative to your own personal lexicon.